Alright, people, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. You've seen that seeing is believing. I don't remember the rest of the lyrics, but either way, the title of the video, what's going on with Tamashi's QC, basically. And as you can see, we have the man of the hour. The reason why this video was inspired in the first place, Future Trunks. And out of all the characters, this really had to happen with Future Trunks. So if you don't know what's going on, right, the QC, Future Trunks for a lot of people has come out the package very loose and with the arm popping off. And real quick, I want to shout out my man Cyrus, because he sent me this video that I'm about to show you guys, and of course you're gonna hear him talk a little bit. But then after we finish watching the video, we're gonna it's a very short video, we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk, because there's a lot of stuff to discuss. So here is my guy Cyrus. I'm gonna play the video so y'all can hear it. I'm not gonna talk.
Brand new, straight out the box. Like I said, one of the most anticipated releases. Straight out the box. Lasts too long. Just straight out the box. Good, loose, like atrocious.
So another thing I wanted to go deeper in on, and is the Vietnam factory the problem? And I want to start off by saying this: whoever was the head or in charge of overseeing this production in the Vietnam factory, I know whoever at Tamashi that was above them, they were like, fired. So we've watched that video, and as you can see, it's not looking good for Future Trunks. Not because the figure itself looks bad, because the figure itself looks really good. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the figure looks great in terms of sculpt work and just the overall look of the figure. It's a very good looking figure. However, as you can see, when you have these type of QC issues where the legs is floppy like that, it can completely ruin your whole experience with the figure. People have been saying, you know, the Vietnam factory, and I've heard this before back when I when I first started, back when I didn't do reviews and I would watch other people's reviews. I remember one of the first people I heard mention this, and this is not to say he's the first person to know about it, but the first person I heard mention this was Anthony's Customs. I heard it in his Final Form Cooler review. And in that review, well, I don't remember the details of the review, but one thing I do know is that I'm pretty sure that figure was from the Vietnam factory as well, but y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. But that figure, he turned out okay. He had some loose joints. The torso, at least in mine, was a little loosey-goosey. But with that being said, the problem, obviously the biggest elephant in the room is that people are playing they hard-earned money for this. You can't sell people a product where that hard-earned money is being spent and they getting something like that. Now, there's many arguments in regards to this. One of the arguments is that, hey, this is just a bad release from Tamashi, and some people believe that to be true. Now, one thing I'll say is that something I personally feel like I noticed, and y'all can let me know if I'm bugging or not, if y'all disagree or if y'all think y'all kind of agree. But either way, I've noticed a lot of the general releases have had issues like this. That's not to say that the premium Bandai releases haven't had issues, but I feel like the premium Bandai releases were more functional issues in terms of, all right, why did they engineer the articulation this way type of deal, you know? it was more something along those lines rather than a joint coming out floppy. You feel me? So the thing is, I don't know what to say. I'm going off the cuff with this, but one thing I will say is that like I said, out of all the characters that could have had this issue, Future Trunks, the updated Future Trunks, mind you, with the sword. The updated Future Trunks with the sword had to have this issue. That was a horrible fumble. That was an open layup that they missed. An open layup that y'all missed with that. And I'm sure what's gonna happen probably is down the line, as they produce more Trunkses, enough people complaining about this. And side note, I was on Reddit the other day, and one person actually said that their Trunks had no issues, none of these issues. But all over Instagram, mainly, that's the social media I use, I've seen people complaining about that floppiness, that same issue that you've seen Sayuros have in the video. People have had. And I've even heard the argument that maybe it's a vocal minority that's having this issue, and I would have a tendency to disagree for just one reason. I haven't seen QC issues this rampant with a release since I don't know when. I can't think of one off the top of my head. So for so many people to be complaining about this same QC, two QC issues, one with the floppy legs, and two, the arm coming off. And real quick, maybe I'll just post it up on the screen instead of making it its own segment. But I'll show a clip where Sayuros has the sheath for the sword, and the sheath for the sword isn't completely. It has like a little crack in the seam. So it's just very unbecoming of a company like Tamashii Nations to have these issues. Now, is that to say that they can't have any issues at all? Of course. When you mass producing action figures, it's always going to be an issue. But once again, when it comes to people money, you can't really play around like that, you know? Or you got to be real serious about it. Not to say that Tamashii's playing around. But whatever happened with this, of all characters, for this to happen with Future Trunks, not a good look, right? So even in the past, I've had, and this goes back to my point with the general releases having more of the QC issues, and that's not a good thing because it's reaching more people. I remember Krillin, the strongest man on Earth, he had this kneecap issue. Now initially when I got my Krillin, he did not have that issue, but after playing around with it, like, he had the kneecap pop off thing, and that's never happened with any figure I've ever had before from Tamashii. And then we have Ultimate Gohan, where none of his joints were loose, but he had like a messed up, he had some type of blemish on his hair sculpt. I don't know what was up with that. And my friend bought 3 copies of Ultimate Gohan. He had that same blemish on all 3 of his copies. So it's clearly a factory issue, error. Now, to be fair, I don't know whether that was the Vietnam factory or not. But regardless, it's all Tamashii. Now, once again, let's add another layer onto that. Are these issues purveying other IPs that Tamashii has? Is it purveying Naruto? Is it purveying? Is it in the Kamen Rider line? Is it in what else? Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man is a general release that just came out. I don't think I've seen anybody complain about his QC. In fact, that figure's gotten a lot of praise, which I do want to review that on the channel. And let me know in the comment section below if you made it this far into the video. Y'all want to see me review Chainsaw Man? I love, that's one of my favorite modern anime. So I guess regardless, you'll see him on the channel, basically is what I'm saying. But I would like to know the enthusiasm level of that. Anyways, back to the main topic. Is this just a bad release from Tamashii? Or a bad drop? Well, regardless if it's a bad drop or not, it kind of doesn't really matter. Even if this was the only bad drop ever, of course people will give them more leeway, but it doesn't matter when people's real money has been spent, you know? Like, it's unfortunate, but when you are a company making all this money, your margin of error for things becomes ever so smaller and smaller. So you can't really, it's hard to tell the person that spent $50 or $60 on this figure to say, hey, this company is having these logistical issues. Well, tell that to my money, tell that to my wallet, you know? So that's kind of a, I guess you would say, a moot point. Now, one thing I also want to mention is, how's the QC compared to when they first started? Now, to be fair, I didn't have a social media where I could see people complaining about potential QC issues like when they first started. Even up until like 2018, 2019, I haven't really seen any people complain about these humongous QC issues. So this is a more recent thing, and not only that, another problem here is that, of course, I've mentioned the money issue, but just adding on to it, when people are spending more and they feel like they're getting less, and then on top of that you have QC issues, now I'm gonna start complaining about everything. Damn. Because at the very least, if it didn't have the QC issues, loose joints, arm coming off and everything, I could be like, all right, the price is increased, but you know, I'm having fun with my figure, and the fun factor in itself of the figure will help to carry and not mention other things. Because now when you start to mention the QC, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna start pointing out. I'm gonna be mad. When you're mad, you start pointing out other things. And another thing, why the figures don't have as much paint as before? And why is why is it that the price is increasing? But for example, the Jada Toys, what is it? It's a Jada Toys figure, and that's a domestic company. He could kick extremely higher than any SH Figuarts I've seen, I think, off the top of my head, or SH Figuarts Dragon Ball figure. And he's another martial arts character, and he's also a $20 figure, $20 price range figure, and he's kicking higher than the SH Figuarts figure. And this reminds me of a comment I saw on my buyer's guide to SH Figuarts, if you wanted to get into it. Somebody was like, I collect NECA figures, and to me, these SH Figuarts Dragon Ball figures aren't really that impressive. They're expensive, and they're just, whatever, not that impressive compared to what you get for NECA on the cheaper price range. Now, I would have to take that person's, to a certain extent, I would have to take that person's word for it, because I don't collect NECA because they don't have any IPs that I collect. Now, they might have responded to the comment. I forgot to check back. But to a certain extent, that could be true. I remember one time on Reddit, I saw somebody collecting, they just had got into collecting Kamen Rider figures, and they was like, oh, I'm disappointed because the figure feels light compared to my heavy NECA figures. And I feel like some of this is a little like things getting misconstrued, because one, SH Figuarts figures are a bit smaller scale compared to domestic figures, and two, it would be no reason for a Kamen Rider figure to weigh as much as like a Predator figure, or to have that kind of weight to it. You get what I'm saying? And it also, I would say, depends on the release. For example, I could argue that Second Form Frieza, even with the articulation limitations that I've seen, and I'm going to review that on the channel at some point too, within the next month or so, it's still a great looking figure. It looks like it captures the likeness of Second Form Frieza very well. Now, when you asking for a $90, price point, it get kind of sketchy, because people is like, alright, it looks nice, but you charge me $90. I want this thing to function how it's supposed to function. I can't just go off of, oh, well, you tried your best. It's not about tried your best when I'm spending my money. Like I said, you can go ahead, us a lot, repeat it in the video. When it comes to people's money, you can't play with people's money. People get restless when it comes to, their patience in regards to spending a lot of money for a figure and them not feeling like they got the value that they spent. But let's move forward. So another thing I wanted to touch on, I believe I talked about this very briefly with Sayoris and Burst ZG. But one thing I've noticed, and Sayoris also noticed this as well, as it seems as Tamashii gains more IPs, would you say that the quality of the Dragon Ball figures has gone down as they gain more IPs? I don't know. I left that brief space in there, like if y'all could really answer, but y'all can't because it's pre-recorded. But I think it's something to acknowledge. But even if that is the case, even if we could confirm and know that that's true, that is not our job to figure out the logistics of that. Or it's like if that is the case, then that's a problem for them to figure out, not us as the consumer. You know? So that's just a question I wanted to pose. Has the QC decreased as they obtain more IPs, and probably, I guess what I'm trying to say is, have they spread themselves too thin by acquiring all these IPs? But maybe we would see QC issues in those IPs as well, if this is the case. If this is the case. Now, another thing I want to point out is this. I remember I was having this discussion with Sayoris, and he was talking about people having double standards for Tamashii and letting Tamashii slide the QC issue versus something like a Kong Studios, or I guess you could say Demoniacal Fit. And what I said is, I understand why people might let Tamashii Nation slide more, because the expectations, well, actually now I think about it a little bit more, it doesn't make sense for them to let Tamashii Nation slide more. But either way, I guess that logic is this: Tamashii is usually on point, but this Trunks release was not. So we're gonna let them slide because they have the reputation of being on point, and this is the whole point in this argument or reasoning right here. You can't, like for example, Kong Studios. Kong Studios is a third-party company. What is a third-party company? Growing up, I would have called this a bootleg. This is a bootleg thing. This is fake. It's not authentic. It would be the equivalent of getting some Jordan shoes, where Jordan is in a Michael Jordan shoes, and Jordan is in a wheelchair dunking. You know? So, with that being said, as we know, as we've gotten older and grown up, we see that bootlegs ain't what they used to be. They're not really bootlegging like that. They get into the same quality as the official company. So I mention all this to say, when it comes to a third-party company, people's expectations would be a little different because it's looked at as a bootleg. So the expectation is kind of lower. And if they get a bad copy, it's like it's just a bootleg. But at the same time, you're spending the same amount of money, so I guess that's a moot point. Even if you are spending, even if it is a bootleg, it's all a company that's providing a service. You're supposed to provide the best service that you can, whether you be a third-party company or a company that has the official license to produce these characters in figure form. You know? So I'm not gonna say I don't know. I would say we gotta hold as long as you're spending money, you really gotta hold all the companies to the same standard, really. But I think Tamashii has put in more pain than, for example, in this particular argument, Tamashii has put in more pain in terms of having consistent quality figures than somebody like a Demoniacal Fit, Kong Studios, all these other third-party companies, Thompson Art Toys. Even if they do have their higher, quote-unquote, higher peaks than Tamashii at times. Which I could even argue that's not necessarily true. But either way, that's not what this video is about. With that being said, I think I covered all the points that I wanted to. Let me check my handy dandy notepad real quick. I think that's it.